What's up, boys and girls? Going solo today. Joe had some other plans. I don't think he's going to be able to make it in time. I also want to let you know we're going to start. We've decided to cut the schedule back a good amount. So we're probably going to start only doing 3 days a week going forward. So be prepared that we will probably be shifting our schedule to Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. That is not final yet. We will let you know in advance, but no Joe today, unless he's able to jump in and join us in a bit. So we had a little miscommunication on my part. And anyway, but we want to announce then let you guys know that we are going to reduce the number of shows. And the primary reason for that is that we are way overbooked in our lives and professionally, and need to pay some attention to some of the revenue generating things in our lives. But we may be adding some other special things at some point here as we proceed. So hope everybody's having a great day. I am having a lovely day, a day of phone calls and no, it was miscommunication. Chuck says, guess that doc visit stretched him out after all. No, it was we had a little miscommunications on the reduction in schedule happening sooner than later. So I'm taking full responsibility for that. And he made some other plans, I believe. So I think he's gonna he'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we have what is his name? We have Marek Olszewski from Cello or Cello. I assume it's Cello blockchain, which I think we all have a little bit of familiarity with. But I'm looking forward to discussing why Cello is Cello, whatever is better. I'm also going to ask him how to pronounce the name of the project. But I'm going to find out and try to get an understanding of what makes that blockchain better than other blockchains, how it functions, what it does, and all of that good stuff. So looking forward to that. Unfortunately, Sean is not coming on Thursday. He had to run out of town at the last minute. It's not going to be available to do the show. And so I think on Thursday, I'm probably going to do a bit of the old school yield stuff. And I've also got a few projects that I want to take a look at that we haven't discussed on the show before. And some new, some just haven't been on the radar. So on Thursday, we'll kind of go back to the old days of DeFi Lunch, where we discuss some opportunities in the market. So anyway, let me take a moment here and get some stuff loaded up. I usually have a minute to chit chat with Joe, but today I did not have time to set that up. So I need to set up the screen to do that. In the meantime, if you guys have some stuff that you think we should be discussing, let me know. I'm happy to, throw it here in the comments. I'm happy to opine. I haven't heard any news. I guess ex-president Trump is going in for his arraignment today. I don't think that's going to impact the markets all. Yesterday, there was a rumor circulating fast and furious, and it came about kind of in a strange way. Kobe, if you're familiar with Kobe, was had tweeted a hash string, and I'm still not sure if people actually cracked it or not or what, but the claim is that people cracked it and that CZ was going to get a red notice from Interpol. The markets jumped 4% on that information, and CZ of course says that there has been no red notice, and came out and denied the rumor, and then posted his number 4 meme, I guess, again. So I have no idea if any of that's true, but that was some of the stir up that occurred yesterday with the market, and who knows where that's going to end up. I have a hard time seeing that happening, but hey, I guess it could. Mr. Musk has decided to mess with everybody's head and add the Doge symbol to the top of Twitter. And so that gave a nice run up in the price yesterday for Doge. I don't know where it is today, if it's dumped back down or not, but it was hilarious to see that he's once again yanking everybody's chain. And of course, those holding Doge are happy campers today. So, I guess if you had a stack, you were happy yesterday if you unloaded for some profits. Let me see if it's doing some more, but he continues to keep it up there. It is up 25.22% or 25.48% in the last 24 hours. So Elon has successfully yanked chains. The interesting thing is he's in the middle of a $250 billion lawsuit against him for pumping and dumping Doge, or that's the excuse me, that's the accusation against him. He's asking for the suit to be dismissed because he says it's baseless and groundless. I have no idea. He claims he never owned any, doesn't own any. And anyway, Niblets brought up Doge. Is Elmo just playing games to troll the space, replacing the bird logo with the Shiba head? Yeah, it cracks me up. I did see a funny meme that he posted earlier yesterday. Let me see if I can pull that up earlier today, I guess. That was actually kind of cute and funny. And I'll load up my screen if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Let me share screen. So this is the cartoon. If you can't see it well on the screen, the cop is pulled over Doge and holding up his license, and the photo in the license is of the Twitter bird, and the Doge is saying that's an old photo. So those of you listening at home, you can now see the joke. I'll put the link to it in the show notes, but I thought that was cute. I thought that was funny. Niblet says, it is technically feasible unit of exchange if Elmo plans to integrate settlements into Twitter. Look, anything that gets the general population's attention to earning money with crypto, I'm happy to see. If he does it, more power to him, that integration into Twitter. I'm happy for it. I mean, I'd love to see Bitcoin and ETH alongside, and I would hope he'd have the sense to do that. But I definitely would love to see that. I'd also be really happy with Doge and Canto as the tokens of Twitter, but I'm sure Canto's not even on the Elmo doesn't even know that Canto exists, is what I was going to say. So anyway, that news is interesting. Things are stirring up. In about an hour, when it finishes compiling, I am posting an interview with a pretty amazing human being. His name is Dr. Josh Rosenthal, formerly a historian, a 3-time tech startup entrepreneur with sizable exits. He always works with his wife and another partner of theirs on all of their businesses, and has an amazing way of not only framing crypto in parallel with the Renaissance and parallel with the American Revolution, but he also has an incredible way of framing crypto for startup founders. And he gives presentations quite a bit on at Ivy League schools and startup foundations and that kind of stuff, accelerators, etc., talking about decentralized innovation, and basically using a layered approach to explaining the value and the strength of peer-to-peer and crypto and decentralization without actually saying crypto, at least until near the end of his presentations. And the framing was so powerful that I saw him do this on on Twitter, that I asked him to come on. And he doesn't do that many appearances, so I was really honored to have him. Well, we spoke for about 2.5 hours. The episode's going to be right under 2 hours with some edits, but it's really powerful. The other thing he does is the reason he came onto my radar and I started following him was he did excuse me, 2 interviews with Bankless. One was called Crypto Renaissance, the other was called Crypto Revolution, where he goes into a ton of detail on how he sees the parallels between what's happening in crypto now and the Renaissance and the crypto revolution, the American Revolution. And the Renaissance is tied directly into public ledgers that became available ledgers that became available for accounting during the Renaissance and the power of the printing press. So talking about kind of value and communications becoming freer. And he talks a lot about how societies become aggregated and then become decentralized. And the Renaissance he sees as a decentralization moment for the world, and sees that as incredibly powerful. He is a historian, Fulbright scholar, the whole bit. Did quite a bit of study and work in medieval archives, and just really powerful theorist, I guess I would call it. He has a venture capital firm, and he also has a fund that invests in funds, as well as a family office from all of the exits that he and his wife and his partner have done. And I think you will find this an incredibly enlightening and powerful episode of Mission DeFi for you to listen to. He really, his framing of where we are and what we're doing is just pretty amazing to me. One of the questions, we talked about the fact that during the Renaissance, the powers that be tried to suppress the printing press and control it, and failed miserably at both of those things. And then he talks about the fact that they finally had to try to co-opt it. And I said to him, in the context of where we are today, with all of the power and capabilities that regulators and governments, lawsuits can have against crypto, do you find yourself nervous about the fact that you have bet, all of your venture funds in the crypto space, and that everything you do is related to that? I said, does that keep you up at night, or does it make you nervous? And his response to me is it makes me double down. He does not believe that it can be stopped. And I don't mean that in a cavalier way. He sees that it will he sees inevitability in the decentralization of the planet again. And he firmly believes that the internet will be crypto will be the internet, and that it's unavoidable, that eventually they will have to try to co-opt it, and that they will fail at completely co-opting it, and that ultimately it will prevail. The other thing is if you've ever thought about having a startup, his approach to not only investing and crypto are unique, but his approach is, every venture capital firm tells you that they're founder centric and founder focused. Well, he lays out how, all venture firms are not obviously founder focused. They're focused on their fund, but talks about positioning entrepreneurs for a better outcome, and positioning them and focusing them on their exit, not the fund's exit. So anyway, we talk a lot about incentives. We talk about misaligned and aligned incentives. We talk about where he thinks things are going. Just a really powerful, brilliant man. I think you will get a lot out of it. I really encourage you to take the time to listen to it. It is a long episode, but to my mind, well worth it. We had a really great conversation and hit it off. So anyway, Niblet says, I like the parallel with the Renaissance. Our economic infrastructure hasn't really changed much in the past couple hundred years. Banking, corporation, et cetera. It's overdue for a evolution. I totally agree. And when you hear him describe what happened during the Renaissance, the parallels to crypto are just unbelievable. Like really, it's double entry bookkeeping, a public ledger, encrypted public ledger, and then communications. He talks about the fact that we don't know that we are peasants, but we are peasants, just as during that time, they knew nothing different, right? So we don't own any of our data. We don't truly have control over our money. We don't, we're beholden to governments for what we are allowed and not allowed to do. And he talks about the fact that at the time that there's all kinds of pain and suffering that comes with the Renaissance, all kinds of hurt, all kinds of things that happen because the change is so dramatic and so different that the upset, the shift in mindset is painful for people. So anyway, exciting stuff. I hope you'll give it a listen, because I really feel awesome about this episode. It's going to end up being one of my top 3, I think, of all time, of the 90 or so, 94 of episode interviews I've done like that. So Niblett said, thought, loyalty points are considered discounts because you have to spend money to get them and they have no cash value. So if a coin has no off ramp to fiat, then it's equivalent to airline points. So if Gary Gensler shuts down the on-off ramps, does he make crypto a non-security? Oh, that's really interesting. I like that, man. I would assume that if there is no value, it's no longer a security. But that's a really interesting thought. Hadn't really thought about that, but I love that. Niblett's going deep today. Love it. Actually, Niblett's is always pretty deep. So let me see. What do I have loaded up so far today? Maybe we'll just do a short show today. We'll see. I already did Activision yesterday. Okay, where are those stories I had loaded up? Sorry, folks, you're going to have to bear with me a second. Oh, okay. So this is an awesome post thread by Gabriel Shapiro. If you're thinking about setting up a DAO, he really does a brilliant job of outlining, based on the 2017 SEC DAO documents, what their expectations are for DAOs. And then he lays out really, the 3 laws of a DAO. And he says, basically, at its simplest, a DAO is a robot. Bitcoin is a DAO. Ethereum is a DAO. But he said, if an org is not both decentralized and autonomous, it's not a DAO. If an org doesn't follow Stan Larimer's 3 rules of DAO robotics, I'll read those to you in a minute, it is not a DAO. DAOs cannot own IP. DAOs cannot have representatives. So that's a pretty strict interpretation of the decentralization to make a DAO real, right? And these are those 3 laws he was talking about. Law number 1, a DAO must encode all its rules in its software. That software must be fully public, and the DAO must by its intrinsic nature always obey that software, i.e. DAOs must run under the control of an incorruptible set of rules that are implemented as publicly auditable open source software. I think by that he is also stating that, that the rules of the governance must be implemented via code. And so I think that makes a ton of sense from the perspective of everything that this SEC has ever said, other entities have ever said. That makes a ton of sense. Law number 2, a DAO must not be able to change its rules without consent of its stakeholders, and such consent must not violate law number 1. In other words, everything needs to be in software, right? So everything needs to be happen via the software on chain, and only the stakeholders consent to having that done. It can't be a representative taking unilateral action. Law number 3, a DAO must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with law number 1 or law number 2. I think those are really some great guidelines. I hope this gets a lot of attention in the space and people really start thinking about this. There are a good example of this that probably puts them in a bit of trouble is Beanstalk. Started out as all of governance happening in software, but then the exploit of them came through the code. So they shut down the software that was running governance. And I would assume that based on this, Gabriel and Stan's, excuse me, choking, interpretation would be that Beanstalk went from what would be probably considered a DAO to not being a DAO because governance is no longer handled by software. But maybe special circumstances of a exploit would merit some time out for that. I don't know. Niblet said, I asked GPT for Joe Banter to help fill the gap. It responded with, Chuck said, that is more the code is the law bullshit, though. I'm still waiting for someone to code up the legal term best faith effort. No, I think that's reasonable. I mean, I think from what they're saying is, if there's a primary person running everything, not a good thing for in the eyes of, what the SEC has said in the past. Obviously, we need far greater clarification on everything related to crypto, DAOs, tokens, etc. And they just are refusing to give it to us. But based on what is available from them, these are kind of the guiding principles. And look, there are very few projects that do this. One way to do that, well, this isn't a DAO. There's another set of terms that came out from Europe yesterday, and I hope I have that tweet loaded up. But essentially, like, there's only 5 projects in the space that I know of right now that are fully, truly, radically decentralized, liquidity, and some others. They are the only ones that would qualify not having further scrutiny and surveillance by the European Union. But we'll talk about that in a minute if I can find that article. So Shizzy said, so if a DAO needs a person for any reason, it is not a DAO, not including token holder voting. I think the need for a person to write code, to implement things, to do tasks is fine. I think what they're saying is that at the decision point, at the point where actual decisions are being made on behalf of the DAO, that in fact, that has to be governed by code. My assumption would be that one of the things that might come out of that is the people doing those tasks may need some contractual obligation as a freelancer, a third party, or a consultant for implementing those things and get paid by the DAO. I have no idea. I'm not an attorney. Don't take my advice. But anyway, that's what I would think. Niblet said, permanence and immutability in software are pretty dangerous. We have a hard time getting things right the first time. Yeah, I agree. But I think there's more and more a base of code that is more reliable for that. Now, interestingly enough, so far, Liquidity has not had any issues. I think they're 2 years in now, and they were radically decentralized from the very beginning. So there's nothing that core team can change about that code. It's released, it's out, it's done. I think over time, as we get better and better at implementing code, we will, in fact, get better at radical decentralization. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. My suspicion is somewhere in potential legal or laws being written that there will be permutations that are allowable changes and upgrades that could be susceptible to exploit or hacking, and that those kinds of things will be allowed to be repaired. And I don't think in this particular instance, this series here, they're not talking about immutability or permanence of the code there. That's the EU thing. I probably should have just waited to talk about that, but I think those are 2 separate issues. Niblet said, so the code really, really, really needs an effective self-correction subsystem built into its own DNA. Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Niblets, I would assume that it's a legit DAO action to vote to deploy new code or added additional functionality. Yeah, Chuck, I think you're absolutely right. I do think that that's a big part of it, is that that there would have to be votes to deploy code. Niblet says, Chuck, but the DAO could be updated to contradict itself. But the DAO could be updated to contradict itself. Not sure I understand, but I'm sure you will clarify for me, Niblets. It's awesome. I love these discussions. So more Senator Warren, because she can't just help but continuing to make an ass of herself. Chuck said there's no law against stupid. I'm so tempted to do a video taking this interview she did and picking it apart and trying to do it from the perspective of someone trying to educate her. Because during the course of this interview, she said there can be a bank run on Bitcoin. No, there can be a bank run on an exchange that is centralized. There cannot be a bank run on Bitcoin. And government needs the ability to print money in order to prevent bank runs. Well, I mean, I can probably give her that in terms of governments and fiat, but it isn't a necessity for in any way, shape, or form for Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies not dependent on it. Yeah. Yes, Niblets, that is Chuck Todd. And I haven't seen the whole interview yet. I've only seen this piece, but evidently he was incredibly uncomfortable with throughout the interview. I want to get the whole thing. I want to take a look at it, and I want to make. I may make an effort if I can find the time at some point to do a response to her, but I'm not sure it's worth the effort. Really, probably not. No. Anyway, uh, that would be a hopeless, obtuse interview. Yeah, I cannot stomach that much masturbatory stupidity. Nicholas, I love that you don't hold back, man. I love that you just have no problem putting it out there, man. That's fucking awesome. Awesome. Uh here's the EU thing. Oh, wait, let me get this URL. Hold on one second. Maybe we'll play this little snippet because I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. Here is the other the EU legal thing that came out. Gabriel says important and unfortunately bearish threat on EU's AML regulation as opposed to DAOs and DeFi. So there's a new EU anti-money laundering regulation, not final yet. It will be directly applicable in all member states once it is final. It addresses DAOs and DeFi. This is by the way, Jake Semftinger. And he says DAOs and DeFi will be in scope of AMLR to the extent those arrangements perform for crypto asset services as defined in MICA and are controlled directly or indirectly, including through smart contracts or voting controls by identifiable natural or legal persons. So, here's where we come back to the radically decentralized potential of some protocols, because this is when controlled, including through smart contracts or voting by identifiable natural or legal persons. And I think that identifiable word is interesting, right? A technical note, however, clarifies DeFi does not fall under the scope of the crypto asset services providers to the extent it is fully decentralized and operated without any intermediary. Therefore, there is no identified body that is responsible for compliance and checks. So essentially what they're saying is, if this is radically decentralized and there is no identifiable human that we can say can control this, make changes, etc., then no one is responsible for compliance and checks, and that project is not responsible. Again, I'm not an attorney, and I'm especially not an EU expert. I'm just reading into what I'm seeing here from him. It remains unclear what operated without any intermediary or controlled by identifiable persons means. The developer seems to be out of the picture, but what about the deployer? What about the governance token holder? What about the upgradability multi-sig holder? What about the LP? What about the holder of LP tokens? What about the relayer? What about the subgraph host? What about the front end host? Naturally, the AMLR draft doesn't say. It will have to be determined for each protocol/arrangement depending on the relevant crypto asset service. He does talk later on about the fact that every project will be up for review. There will be a database for it all, and every project will be handled on an individual basis. So there is an interpretation capability here with regards to this regulation. If DeFi protocols are considered to be operated with an intermediary and are controlled by identifiable persons through smart contracts, so-called DAOs, and are non-compliant, they will be considered unregistered and unlicensed crypto asset service providers. Credit and financial institutions, including crypto asset service providers, will be prohibited from corresponding with these unlicensed entities, controlled DAOs, and DeFi protocols. There will be a public register on unregistered and unlicensed crypto asset service providers, including those controlled by DAOs, DeFi protocols, together with shell banks maintained by AMLA, the new anti-money laundering watchdog in the EU. When conducting their counterparty risk analysis, crypto asset service providers will be required to analyze their counterparties' wallets. Transactions with unidentified addresses and DeFi applications will trigger a high-risk assessment. So, it looks like they are, trying to figure out some way to do anti-money laundering in the EU relevant to DeFi and crypto. It's going to be really interesting to see where this fleshes out. I will say that it is at least heartening to know that they understand to some extent, that there are some things they can't be policed, and that there are some circumstances where humans can't do anything to enforce what they're asking them to enforce. Where this all ends up, who knows? Again, it hasn't been finalized. I think he says later on in a comment that it has to be put into place, I think next month, and then there will be 18 months of implementation planning. And then at the end of the 18 months is when this will go into effect. So anyway, Niblet says, oh, what could be better for fighting money laundering than a permanent immutable ledger of all transactions? Yeah, no fucking right. I mean, the most transparent method possible for tracking money laundering. But, what do we know, right? At some point in the flow, at some point in time, someone will be doxxed and the whole flow unravels publicly. Yeah, definitely. Look, this is all going to be painful and messy, really painful and messy for probably a long time to come. But, we just got to cope, I guess. Just a quick note. I posted, we talked about the fact yesterday that Eamon was impacted by the Euler Labs exploit, as well as he posted a long summary of what he encountered when scammers tried to take advantage of him being a victim of the Euler hack. And I would encourage you to go read his profile, Zero G's, on Twitter, because he did a brilliant job of kind of explaining how it all worked and how scammers, when they know somebody's down and out and has lost value, that they know they're desperate to try to get it back. Anyway, Euler Labs announced yesterday evening that following successful negotiations, all of the recoverable funds taken from the Euler X protocol on March 13th have now been successfully returned by the exploiter. So that's great news. I don't know what recoverable funds means, but I assume it has something to do with some level of reward. They said because the exploiter did the right thing, returned the funds, and the $1 million reward campaign launched by the Euler Foundation will no longer be accepting new information. Full details to follow. I assume they're giving him a cut, right? Then he's getting to keep, a couple of mil or something for finding his conscience in the recesses of his brain after he fucked with people completely and totally. Of course, he could have just submitted it for a bug bounty and, made some money. Not as much as he's going to make from hacking it, though. So I'm not sure what kind of behavior we're teaching or what kind of incentives we're providing. But yeah. Niblet says, I wish that could have happened with Beanstalk. There's actually an effort underway, but it took far too long to put in place. To try to negotiate with the exploiter of Beanstalk. A friend of ours, Syncubate, has been kind of spearheading that, trying to get the team to be more actively engaged with it. I think there was a general feeling within the leadership team at Beanstalk that it was, not hopeful, that there was no way to get the money back, et cetera, et cetera. But there's an attempt being made to try to do that. And they're still trying to encourage the team to actively engage with the group that's trying to do it, Hats Finance, and see if they can make something happen to try to recover some funds from the hacker. I doubt very seriously that's a realistic possibility, but who knows? Let me see what else. Oh, this is fascinating. So there is a criminal case against the Coinbase manager or executive who utilized listing information to inside trade with his brother and somebody else on Coinbase, and made like $1.5 million front running, coin listings, token listings. And so he's already pled guilty to that and is supposed to be sentenced, I think, sometime this month. But there is also an SEC lawsuit against him. And interestingly enough, Coinbase itself is filing briefs on behalf of the court against the SEC, because evidently a number of projects, I think also Polyfi, is this behind a paywall? wasn't yesterday. That's really strange. I think that Polyfi and two of the blockchain associations that do lobbying are all filing friends of the court briefs to contest the SEC's rights to call any of the assets that were involved securities. They see this as an opportunity to push the issue in court and force the SEC's hands on labeling these things securities. And evidently, they think this particular case gives them some grounding to do that. Coinbase, in particular, taking a stance that they have a process for reviewing these that made this not pass the Howey test. They are in the filings of the different parties filing, attacking the SEC's ability to interpret Howey as it relates to crypto, and trying to get the judge to rule that, in fact, because Congress haven't legislated on these types of issues related to securities in crypto, that the SEC does not actually have the power to charge and sue folks in this way. This is going to be really interesting to see. I guess the attorneys all think that this has a lot of more potential from a lawsuit perspective to get something into a judgment. We'll see what happens. I don't know if anything good's going to come out of it or not, but we'll see what happens. Niblet said, problem with fully decentralized is that such orgs can't respond to black swans well because black swans cannot be predicted and coded for. Yeah, I totally agree. Look, there's going to be all kinds of problems with us trying to get to that decentralized model. But the other thing I would say to teams is, can you build in the ability to handle black swan events? I don't know if that's possible or not, but I'd certainly like to see people try. Niblet says responses to black swans always have to be bespoke and targeted. I think you're probably right. But we have a lot of history and a lot of data related to that. So there may be some opportunities to code for it, but it's probably a next to impossible thing. So, all right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up today. 5 minutes short of our normal 45-minute goal. Thank you so much, Niblets and Chuck, for participating today. Love you guys being here and appreciate your participation. Thank you, everyone who's listening on the podcast. If you are and you haven't joined our community yet, visit t.me/mission DeFi, t.me/mission DeFi. Lots of good people, lots of good conversations, lots of good alpha happening in that community. I would encourage you to join, introduce yourself, and become part of the chat because there's lots to be learned. I've learned so much already from the people in there, including Sean and Niblets and Chuck and a bunch of other folks who are in having discussions on a regular basis. Joe and I will be back tomorrow with one of the folks from Cello to talk about their blockchain and why it's important and why they think it's better than what's out there. So I'm looking forward to that conversation and to learning more about that. And if you're listening on YouTube or podcast, please rate and review us. Make sure you subscribe, click the little bell so you get alerted when new episodes come out. And make sure, as Joe would say, you have smashed the thumbs up. I hope everyone has a fantastic Tuesday afternoon. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.